he got real family members too. So they for sure might do what they do. But I'm gonna get active. That's all it is. And it is what it is. It's on the floor. It'll be smoke forever. Fuck it.
Houston, Texas, March 30th, 2023, 6:10 in the evening. A white Mercedes is traveling north on Mid Lane in River Oaks, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. A black Subaru SUV pulls up alongside it. What happens next lasts long enough that witnesses outside stop counting the shots. When Houston Police Department arrives, there are more than 70 shell casings on the ground. A man is found outside the entrance of a nearby parking garage. He is pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators will later describe this as a targeted killing. Planned, deliberate, months in the making. Here is what makes this case different from most. The man who died had survived something far more direct just 8 weeks earlier. He walked away from it without a scratch on his record. And then he sat down in front of a camera and told the world exactly what happened. That interview reached 2 million people. One of them had already decided what he was going to do about it. This is the story of Daryl Gentry, known to the world as BTB Savage. Welcome to Crime Story Network. His full legal name was Daryl Gentry Jr., born in 1996 in Cleveland, Ohio. And before this story goes anywhere near how it ended, it is worth establishing clearly how it started, because Daryl Gentry was not a kid the system had written off. He was a kid who moved from Cleveland to San Antonio, Texas, attended Churchill High School, and by his own account spent most of those years playing basketball, not chasing a music career. Music was not even the plan. After high school, Gentry enlisted in the United States Army. He served 4 years. His deployment took him to Korea, and according to his mother, Bernita Ward, that posting is where everything shifted. She told KPRC2 directly that it was in Korea where her son learned to rap and first decided to pursue music seriously. The military had given him structure, distance, and apparently a new direction. But something went wrong during that service. Multiple sources confirmed that Gentry was involved in a fraud scheme while overseas and faced a period of incarceration as a result. The specific details of the charges were never entered into public court records that are accessible, but the outcome was clear. He received a dishonorable discharge from the Army. That distinction matters. A dishonorable discharge is the most severe outcome a court-martial can produce. It strips every benefit a service member has earned: the GI Bill, VA healthcare, any pension eligibility, and access to federal employment. It also shows up on background checks permanently. Gentry came out of that process with no military support system and no institutional safety net. He was in his mid-20s, back in Texas, and starting over with a record attached to his name. He chose music. He adopted the stage name BTB Savage. BTB stood for Break the Bank. He was not running from his past. He was building a brand around it. He incorporated BTB Savage Entertainment LLC, a formal business entity confirmed in Harris County business filings. This was not just a SoundCloud page. He was structuring it like a company. In 2020, he released Dolce & Gabbana as an unsigned San Antonio artist. The track gained traction locally and started circulating online. In 2022, he collaborated with Detroit rapper Skilla Baby on Two-Headed Goat, a feature that moved his name into a wider industry conversation. In 2023, he released My Turn. Given everything he had come through, that title carried weight. By early 2023, his career was building real momentum. His mother, Bernita Ward, based in Las Vegas, told reporters he had recently moved closer to Houston to be near his manager and producer. Ward described her son as a father first. He had a 4-year-old son he was raising. She told ABC 13 she never called him BTB Savage. To her, he was just Daryl. She also told reporters that in February of 2023, he called her excited because his rap career was finally starting to kick off. That call was about a music feature. It was the last piece of good news this story contains. If you want to follow this all the way through, subscribe to Crime Story Network right now. Hit the bell. What comes next moves fast. February 3rd, 2023. Downtown San Antonio. It was close to 11 at night. Daryl Gentry was at his apartment with his girlfriend. By his own account, and by the account his mother later gave to reporters, the evening had started simply enough. A local rapper had been reaching out to him for weeks about a paid feature. The setup was straightforward on paper. The rapper would come through, bring studio equipment, pay Gentry for a verse, and they would record. According to Bernito Ward, there had even been talk of a contract with a $2,000 fee attached. Gentry had been hesitant. It was late. His apartment was not a studio. But the money was real and the opportunity was on the table. He agreed. They were coming over. When they showed up, it was not just the rapper. There was an older man with him, introduced as the rapper's uncle. Nothing about that introduction raised an immediate alarm. People bring people. It happens. But the moment both men stepped through the door, something shifted in the room. They were not looking at the space the way people look at a space they are unfamiliar with. They were reading it. The furniture, the layout, where things were sitting, what was visible. Gentry noticed it. He did not say anything. He kept watching. The man introduced as the uncle was Omar Richardson, 34 years old. San Antonio. He went by the street name Stu Wop. Richardson was a founding member of the Styx Gang, a San Antonio street organization that later evolved and branched into a documented criminal enterprise known as the Bloodstone Villains, or BSV. He had not come to Gentry's apartment to make music. That was never the plan. For a while, the visit moved normally enough on the surface. Equipment came out. The appearance of a recording session was maintained. And then the rapper announced he needed to go back to the car. He had forgotten part of the equipment. He walked out. Richardson stayed behind. That was the switch. And Gentry caught it. If the rapper was the one here for the feature, there was no reason for him to be the one going to the car. That should have been the uncle. The logic did not hold. Gentry walked to the front door and locked it. According to his account given in the Vlad TV interview, he also placed his own firearm on a nearby table. Not hidden. Visible. A signal. Richardson read the room the same way Gentry had. He pulled out cash, held it up, told Gentry to relax, tried to walk the tension back down. And for a moment, the conversation continued. Then Richardson started asking about Gentry's jewelry. The chain he was wearing. The watch. What jeweler did he use? How much did he spend on it? Gentry answered him. Kept talking. And then, mid-sentence, while Gentry was looking down at his chain, Richardson grabbed the firearm off the table and leveled it at him. He told Gentry to hand it all over. Gentry refused. What followed was a physical confrontation. Gentry grabbed Richardson's arms and forced both men to the floor. The gun discharged during the struggle. A round struck the refrigerator. Outside the apartment, Richardson's associates had been waiting. When they realized the robbery had gone sideways, they opened fire through the front door. Multiple rounds came through. The apartment, a moment before a tense standoff, became an active shooting scene. Gentry's girlfriend came out of the back room armed. She fired at Richardson, striking him twice in the back. The two men were still in contact on the floor. When she fired again, one round missed Richardson and struck Gentry in the left elbow. His arm broke from the impact. He required surgery. Richardson, according to the SAPD report later cited by KPRC2, was found face down in the apartment hallway. He was pronounced dead at the scene. San Antonio Police Department responded to reports of gunfire at approximately 11:25 that night. They conducted a full investigation. The department spokesperson confirmed the outcome clearly. It was ruled a justifiable homicide. No charges were filed against Daryl Gentry. No charges were filed against his girlfriend. From the standpoint of every law enforcement agency that reviewed it, the case was closed. What none of those agencies could account for was what Gentry was about to do next. The San Antonio Police Department had closed the case. Justifiable homicide. No charges. Daryl Gentry walked away from February 3rd as a free man with a clean legal record on the matter. The logical move at that point was to go quiet. Richardson was connected. The people around him were watching. The smarter play was to let time pass, let the noise die down, and keep his head down while his music career continued to build. Instead, within days of the shooting, Gentry posted photographs of himself inside his apartment, standing in the middle of the aftermath of the fight. Bloodstained walls visible behind him. The caption on one post read, "Too much motion." The images spread immediately across social media platforms. For anyone in Richardson's circle who had not yet confirmed what had happened or who had been involved, those photographs answered every question. Gentry's face, his apartment, his direct involvement, all of it, posted by his own hand and distributed to thousands of followers. His mother Bernito Ward told ABC 13 she saw the posts and called him directly. Her message to him was plain: take it down. Let the family grieve. Do not poke at this. According to Ward, Richardson's family and associates were already sending threats, telling Gentry they were going to kill his family, make his mother cry, and come after his son. Ward told him not to respond. He kept the posts up anyway. Then came the interview. Vlad TV is not a regional platform. It is one of the largest hip-hop media operations in the world, run by a personality known as DJ Vlad, who has built his channel on pulling raw, unfiltered conversations from artists, particularly around street-level subjects that other platforms would not touch. A Vlad TV interview does not reach a neighborhood. It reaches millions of people across the country and beyond. Artists have had careers launched on that platform. They have also had private information broadcast to audiences that included people they should never have been talking in front of. On March 17, 2023, Daryl Gentry sat down with DJ Vlad and gave a full account of what had happened on February 3rd. He described the setup, the moment he noticed the men scanning his apartment, the switch when the rapper left and Richardson stayed behind, the struggle for the firearm, his girlfriend's role, his own injury, and the outcome. He confirmed on camera, to a platform with millions of subscribers, that he had been involved in Richardson's death and that law enforcement had cleared him completely. He was not speaking cautiously. He was speaking freely. When Vlad asked him directly whether he was concerned about retaliation from Richardson's people, Gentry's response was documented across every major outlet that covered the case. He said, "He got real family members too. So they for sure might. They might do what they do. But I'm going to get active." That response told anyone watching two things simultaneously. It confirmed he understood the threat was real, and it confirmed he had no intention of standing down. It was not just words. It was a public declaration of posture to a network of people who were already grieving and already angry. Bernita Ward later addressed the interview publicly and at length. She stated that her son had recorded the session with Vlad TV on March 17th. She stated that Vlad TV did not publish the footage until March 26th, 9 days after it was recorded. In her own documented words, which were picked up and reported across multiple outlets, "My son did the Vlad video on March 17th, 2023. Vlad TV did not drop the footage until March 29th, 2023. They edited the footage to make the video what it was. My son was going to do an interview about his music, and Vlad kept harping on the Omar situation. Daryl said, 'Nah fam, let's just stick to the music.' Vlad didn't even put the music convo on there." The version published by Vlad TV contained almost exclusively the account of the February 3rd shooting. The music conversation, the reason Gentry said he agreed to the interview in the first place, was not included in the final edit. Ward also stated she believed Vlad TV had timed the release deliberately. KPRC2's investigation later noted that the Vlad TV interview was published the same day that Montrell Burley rented the Subaru in San Antonio. Whether the interview's publication directly triggered the rental or whether it simply accelerated a plan already in motion is not something the evidence conclusively establishes. What the evidence does establish is that the interview went up, the rental happened the same day, and Daryl Gentry was dead 4 days later. By the time he was killed, the interview had accumulated over 2 million views. 2 million people had watched him describe exactly what he had done, confirm he faced no legal consequence for it, and state on camera that he was prepared to escalate if pushed. One of those viewers had already made a decision. If you want the full investigative breakdown of what happened next, subscribe to Crime Story Network right now. We cover the evidence that most people never see. Hit the subscribe button and stay with us. Montrell Leonard Burley was 40 years old. He lived in New Braunfels, Texas, a city that sits directly on Interstate 35 between San Antonio and Houston, roughly equidistant from both. He was not someone law enforcement was unfamiliar with. He was a documented gang member with a prior criminal record that included a felony conviction involving a deadly weapon and a prior failure to appear in court while out on bail. He also rapped under the name Versus 600. By most accounts, the music career had not gone anywhere significant. But it existed, and it mattered to him. What mattered more was Omar Richardson. Burley and Richardson had known each other for years. They were not related by blood. Court documents are specific on that point. But they had both been original founding members of San Antonio's Styx gang, which later evolved into the Bloodstone Villains, documented by law enforcement as BSV. Investigators who reviewed the case described the bond between the two men as one of the closest personal relationships in their shared network. They called each other brothers. That is not a figure of speech in the context of how this case unfolded. It was the operating reason for everything that followed. When Richardson was killed in February, Burley did not process it privately. Approximately 1 month before Gentry's murder, Burley released a music video under the Versus 600 name. The track was called Pain is Love. It was dedicated publicly to Omar Richardson. The video went online for anyone to find. It was not ambiguous. It was not subtle. It was a man telling the world that he had not moved on and did not intend to. On March 26, 2023, the same day the Vlad TV interview was published online, Burley walked into an Avis location in San Antonio and rented a black 2020 Subaru Outback. The vehicle had Florida license plates. His fiancée later told investigators the rental was necessary because Burley's own vehicle had been involved in a car accident. That was the explanation she gave. What the evidence would later show is that the Subaru was not rented for ordinary transportation. The following day, March 29th, approximately 26 hours before Daryl Gentry was killed, license plate reader cameras along Interstate 10 picked up the Subaru with its Florida plates traveling eastbound through Fayette County, heading from San Antonio toward Houston. That movement was logged automatically by cameras mounted along the highway. It would become one of the most critical pieces of the evidence trail. That evening, around 7 p.m., something happened to the plates. Investigators believe it was at that point that the Florida plates were removed from the Subaru and replaced with plates taken from a stolen Kia registered in Harris County. The swap was deliberate. License plate reader cameras track plates, not vehicles. If the plates changed mid-route, the trail would break. Whoever made that decision understood how the technology worked and planned around it. It was not an improvisation. Cell tower data placed Burley's phone in the vicinity of Gentry's short-term rental on West Creek Lane in Houston for several hours that evening. Gentry had been staying at the location while in the city. Investigators confirmed it was a short-term rental. Burley's phone was not passing through the area. The data showed it stationary in the vicinity for an extended window. He was watching, learning the schedule, mapping the patterns of when Gentry left and when he returned. The following morning, March 30th, Daryl Gentry called his mother Bernita Ward. The Houston Police Department detective who filed the probable cause affidavit, Kyle Stringer, documented Ward's account directly. She told investigators that Gentry called her that morning while he was at a restaurant. He believed the people around him at that table were connected to a threat developing around him. He could not speak openly. He stepped away and sent her a text message. His exact words, as documented and reported across multiple outlets: "I think they are trying to set me up." Ward had been urging him for weeks to come to Las Vegas. Get out of Texas. Get away from everything connected to what had happened in February. According to the probable cause affidavit, she told him that day he either needed to come to her or leave. He got up from that restaurant and he moved. He was in his white Mercedes heading north on mid-lane. Ward later told investigators he had planned to come to Las Vegas that day or the next. He never made it. Burley's phone data placed him back in the area near Gentry's location again that afternoon, several hours of presence leading directly into the early evening window. The same counter-surveillance logic that had driven the plate switch 2 nights earlier was still operating. At some point before the shooting, the stolen Kia plates were still on the Subaru. At approximately 6:10 p.m., at the 4600 block of San Felipe Street near the intersection of Mid Lane and River Oaks, the black Subaru pulled alongside Gentry's white Mercedes. Witnesses at the scene reported the vehicle pulling up and sustained gunfire erupting. HPD would later recover more than 70 shell casings from the scene. Houston Police Chief Troy Finner responded personally. He told reporters from the outset that this was a targeted killing. His statement on record: "At one point they could have shot from the vehicle and whatnot. But the fact is multiple shots were fired, so they did get out at one point." Daryl Gentry was found near the entrance of a nearby parking garage. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 26 years old. 2 suspects were seen fleeing the scene in the black Subaru heading south at high speed. License plate cameras picked up the stolen Kia plates on the Subaru at least 10 minutes after the shooting. Then, approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes after the shooting, the Florida plates were back on the vehicle, picked up again by I-10 cameras now traveling westbound, back toward San Antonio. That same night, At approximately 11 p.m., a neighbor's surveillance camera in New Braunfels captured footage of a man wiping down a black Subaru, inside and out. The cleanup had already begun. The investigation was about to catch up. March 31st, 2023, the morning after the shooting. Houston investigators had spent the overnight hours building the foundation of a search warrant. By the time the sun came up, they had it. The target, the black 2020 Subaru Outback. The location where it had been tracked, Montrell Burley's residence in New Braunfels. New Braunfels SWAT was brought in to execute the warrant. As officers moved into position around the property that morning, the Subaru started moving. It pulled out of the driveway and headed away from the house. Officers stopped it approximately 100 feet down the road. Inside the vehicle, Passion James behind the wheel and Burley in the passenger seat. They were leaving together, in the same vehicle that license plate reader cameras had been logging since March 26th. Both were taken into custody. Both phones were seized. A search of the Subaru was conducted on the spot by the New Braunfels Crime Scene Unit. During that search, a rifle shell casing fell from the rear door hatch of the vehicle. It was collected, logged, and sent for forensic analysis. The result came back consistent with shell casings recovered at the crime scene on Mid Lane in Houston. One piece of physical evidence, recovered from inside the vehicle, placing it at the location of the murder. Burley was charged at that point with narcotics possession. That was the only charge immediately available under the circumstances. Filing a murder charge on the spot requires a different and higher evidentiary threshold. Investigators needed to compile and review the full body of evidence before that could happen. Texas law gave them a 72-hour window to hold Burley on the narcotics charge while that process moved forward. Houston detectives interviewed Burley during the time he was in custody in Comal County. He told them he had not recently been in Houston. He said he had loaned the Subaru out to someone else and was not in the vehicle at the time of the shooting. When investigators pressed him on who exactly had borrowed the car, Burley stopped the interview and requested an attorney. The interview ended. At some point within the 72-hour window, and under circumstances that ABC 13 and KPRC 2 both noted were not fully explained by New Braunfels authorities, Burley was released. He walked out while investigators were still building the murder case. What stayed behind was everything they had collected. And what they had collected, when assembled into a complete picture, was a 5-part evidentiary case that pointed in one direction. The first thread was the Avis rental records. Criminal investigators subpoena rental car records as a matter of standard procedure. Those records document the renter's name, their driver's license, the date of rental, the specific vehicle, mileage, and return information. The records for the black 2020 Subaru Outback rented on March 26th in San Antonio confirmed Burley as the renter. The same vehicle witnesses had described fleeing the mid-lane shooting was the vehicle he had signed for 4 days earlier. The second thread was the license plate reader data. Automated cameras mounted along Interstate 10 and at key intersections log every plate that passes their field, attaching a timestamp and geographic location to each capture. Investigators pulled the I-10 camera data and found the Subaru's movement documented across multiple captures. The Florida plates were on the vehicle when it was picked up traveling eastbound through Fayette County on March 29th, moving toward Houston approximately 26 hours before the shooting. The same cameras captured the Florida plates again on the Subaru approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes after the shooting, now traveling westbound on I-10 heading back toward San Antonio. In between, the stolen Harris County Kia plates had been on the vehicle, and those plates too had been captured by cameras, scanned on the Subaru at least 10 minutes after the shooting. Burley had switched the plates to disrupt the trail. Investigators simply cross-referenced both sets and rebuilt it. The third thread was the cell tower data. Every time a mobile phone connects to a cell tower, that connection generates a log, a timestamp, and the tower's geographic location. Investigators obtained Burley's cell phone records and pulled the hour-by-hour data. His phone was placed in the vicinity of Gentry's Airbnb location near the Galleria for several hours in the lead-up to the 6:10 p.m. shooting on March 30th. The data also placed the phone back in New Braunfels after the shooting. According to ABC 13 and KPRC 2, the cell phone data was not yet available when Burley was initially stopped and interviewed in New Braunfels on the morning of March 31st. That data took additional time to compile and review. which is why the murder warrant did not come until a full week after the shooting. The fourth thread was the shell casing. The rifle casing that fell from the rear door hatch of the Subaru during the New Braunfels traffic stop was forensically analyzed and found to be consistent with shell casings recovered from the mid-lane crime scene in Houston. Ballistic consistency is not a DNA match, but in a case where multiple independent evidence threads are corroborating each other, it carries weight that prosecutors can bring into a courtroom. The fifth thread was Passion James, where Burley had told investigators he had not been in Houston and had loaned the vehicle to an unnamed third party. Passion James told investigators the opposite. According to the probable cause affidavit cited by Houston public media, she told police that Burley had been away from home from the morning of March 30th until that night. She identified the vehicle as the one Burley had rented. She told investigators that Burley had a close friend named Omar who had been killed earlier in the year. She referred to Omar as Burley's cousin, though court documents are clear that the two men were not blood relatives. Her statement placed Burley in the vehicle and away from New Braunfels on the day of the murder, directly contradicting his account at every material point. When Burley had been confronted during his interview about who had borrowed the car and could not answer without implicating himself, he had stopped talking and asked for a lawyer. Passion James kept talking, and what she said dismantled his alibi. This case was not solved by a single breakthrough. It was built by 3 police departments working in coordination across 2 counties and one of the largest cities in the country. Houston Police Department led the murder investigation and filed the probable cause affidavit in Harris County Court. The New Braunfels Police Department and its SWAT unit executed the vehicle search warrant, conducted the traffic stop, and recovered the shell casing. San Antonio Police Department contributed background on Omar Richardson, the Bloodstone villains, and the February 3rd self-defense determination. The probable cause affidavit drew on all 3 agencies' independent contributions and synthesized them into a single documented case. That level of coordinated cross-jurisdictional work is not a given in homicide investigations. It reflected how quickly and seriously investigators had identified this case as targeted gang retaliation from the moment they arrived on mid-lane. The murder warrant was signed on April 7, 2023, 8 days after Daryl Gentry was killed. Montrell Burley was now a wanted man. Subscribe to Crime Story Network right now and turn on your notifications. When this case goes to trial, we will be in that courtroom covering every detail. You do not want to miss it. April 7, 2023. 8 days after Daryl Gentry was pronounced dead outside that parking garage in River Oaks, Houston Police Department formally filed a murder charge against Montrell Leonard Burley. A warrant was issued. Crime Stoppers posted a reward of up to $5,000 for information on his whereabouts. HPD made clear publicly that the investigation was not finished on a single front. Court documents referenced a second suspect who had been present in the Subaru during the shooting. That individual has not been publicly named or charged in any record available as of this production. During the 4 days between the charge filing and Burley's surrender, Bernita Ward made a public statement. She had already spoken to ABC 13. She had already told reporters what her son texted her that morning and what she had spent weeks trying to get him to do. Now, with a murder warrant out and 2 named suspects still free, she directed her words at the men responsible. She did not call for anything outside the legal system. Her documented statement, "Nobody wins here. No mother should ever feel this pain. No mother should have to bury a child." She added, without qualification, that both families had now lost someone. That was not a small thing to say from where she was standing. On April 11, 2023, at approximately 5:30 in the morning, Montrell Leonard Burley walked into the Harris County Joint Processing Center and turned himself in. He was booked into Harris County Jail. 4 hours later, at 10 a.m., he appeared in probable cause court for a bond hearing. The state's position was straightforward. Prosecutors requested no bond at all. They presented 3 grounds. The first was Burley's prior felony conviction involving a deadly weapon. Under Texas law, bond denial is available in first-degree felony cases where the defendant has a prior violent conviction and prosecutors move to invoke that provision. The second was a documented prior failure to appear conviction, a matter of public record that told the court Burley had previously been released on bail and did not come back. The third was the nature of the alleged offense itself. that Burley had traveled more than 200 miles across the state of Texas in a rented vehicle with switch license plates over the course of multiple days to carry out what prosecutors explicitly characterized as premeditated gang retaliation. The prosecutor's statement at the hearing was entered into the record and reported by KPRC2. This suspect committed the murder of this complainant in retaliation for that complainant's involvement in a shooting in the San Antonio area earlier in the year. Burley's defense attorney pushed back. The argument for a $20,000 bond rested on 2 points: that Burley had previously lived in Houston and therefore had community ties to the area, and that the bond request was proportionate given what the evidence showed at that stage of the proceedings. The attorney noted for the record that Burley had been living in New Braunfels for the past 2 years. The magistrate judge set bond at $1 million. She noted on the record that only a district court judge has the authority to deny bond entirely, which would require a separate dedicated hearing. But she was specific about what was driving the amount she chose. Her documented words, reported across multiple outlets. What gives this court significant concern is the allegation that Mr. Burley actually traveled quite some distance in order to essentially avenge the death of his friend or family member. She also flagged the prior failure to appear conviction directly as a documented flight risk and cited the prior felony with a deadly weapon as an aggravating factor. As an additional condition, she ordered that if Burley posted bail and was released, he was required to remain in the state of Texas and wear a GPS monitor at all times. She also ordered him to undergo an evaluation to assess for mental illness or intellectual disability. His next scheduled court appearance was set for April 17th. Simultaneously, the state filed separate paperwork at the district court level, specifically the 208th District Court of Harris County, requesting that bond be denied entirely pending trial. That process required its own hearing before a district court judge and ran on a separate legal track from the magistrate's ruling. Burley did not post the $1 million bond. He remained in Harris County Jail. His defense team eventually filed an application for writ of habeas corpus, a formal legal challenge arguing that his continued detention without bond reduction violated his constitutional rights. The case was styled as Ex parte Montreal Burley, appealing from the 208th District Court of Harris County. The Texas First Court of Appeals took up the matter and issued its ruling on March 18, 2025, nearly 2 years after Gentry's death. The court upheld the bond denial. Its reasoning rested on 3 factors: the severity of the offense, Burley's documented prior criminal history, and the calculated nature of the multi-day interstate preparation used to carry out the killing. The appeal failed. Burley remained where he had been. As of the time of this production, Montreal Leonard Burley is still in Harris County Jail. No confirmed trial date appears in publicly available court records. The second suspect who was in that Subaru has not been identified or charged in any document accessible to the public. When Burley's surrender was confirmed in April 2023, Bernita Ward spoke a second time. Her documented statement: "I was very glad to hear the news that he surrendered himself to authorities. I was upset that he got a bond because I didn't want him to have no bond. But I'm going to let the law be the law. Conviction will give me justice. That's all I want. I just want justice. I don't want no more violence." That last sentence is worth sitting with. A woman who had just buried her son, who had spent weeks warning him, who had watched an interview go up the day before he died, and what she asked for was a courtroom. Not anything else. Just a verdict. The full human cost of this case sits across 2 families. Daryl Gentry left behind a 4-year-old son. Omar Richardson, the man whose death set this sequence of events in motion, also had children. Both of those children are now growing up without their fathers. If Montreal Burley is convicted of first-degree murder in Texas, he faces a sentencing range of 5 to 99 years or life in prison. That is what the law allows. That is what Bernita Ward is waiting for. Daryl Gentry was reviewed by every legal institution that examined the events of February 3rd. San Antonio police cleared him. No prosecutor in Texas charged him. The law had finished with the case. What it could not reach was a 40-year-old man in New Braunfels who watched an interview accumulate 2 million views and made a decision about what to do with what he had seen. Burley's trial has not yet taken place. A second person who was in that Subaru has not been found. This case is not finished. And until it is, Bernita Ward is still waiting.